Today in history, in 1896, American criminal H.H. Holmes was considered the first known serial killer in the United States. He was hanged. He confessed to 130 murders, though some believe the real number exceeded 200.
Welcome to What the Fuck History, where we discuss the wackiest and weirdest things that make us say, well, what the fuck history. I am your host, Zachary, and I apologize in advance. This is not one of the funny ones.
My name is Meghan, and I'm scared about Zach's story. He's been gearing us up all day, man.
And I'm Matt. Today I learned a thing, but then a lot of things happened, and I can't remember it as I am writing my notes here, but I am trying to write enough to jumpstart my brain into remembering that there's a type of tick called the Lone Star tick that if it bites you can cause you to develop an allergy to red meat.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
It's awful.
It was
in my, I was trying to remember the thing that I learned while I was typing notes, and I was like, if I just keep typing.
I love that. So in your notes it says, if I just keep typing, I'll remember.
If I just keep typing, yeah.
That's fucking
I left
great,
it all in
dude.
because I figured everyone deserved to be a part of that mental process for me.
That's amazing.
At least the good part about that tick, not that there's a whole lot of good, is that for the time being, they are only found in the Blue Ridge Mountains.
Hell yeah.
Okay.
It's a shame that it's not only found in Texas.
Yeah, right?
Yeah, I wish. They deserve it.
But your Today in History, H.H. Holmes he was the murder house guy, right?
I don't know.
I'm pretty sure.
I just saw it and I thought it was interesting, and so that's why.
Yeah,
that's why I said it. Oh yeah, he's the murder house guy.
Yeah, Murder Castle.
Wait, is it?
He built a house that had a bunch of secret
Horror
trapdoors,
hotel.
and he was just killing people constantly.
Yeah.
Yeah. Did we do him yet?
We haven't done a story on him. No.
Oh, then we should save him. Don't tell them anything else.
Hey guys, don't look it up.
Don't look
it up. We'll do it later.
Guys,
we're
gonna do it for a Halloween episode. Fucking don't look it up.
Don't look it up.
But also, if you've played that one game by that one developer that makes all those stories, that the fucking Quarry, Until Dawn, all those games that make you choose your fate, they did do one on the H.H. Holmes murder house. So don't look that up either. But anyways, our strikes have been reset to 0, and we faked playing a game of rock, paper, scissors. And the order for tonight is Zach. Now, I do need to follow up on the fact that Zach's intro kind of set the stage for this. He said it's not going to be fun. So we put him in front so that hopefully Meghan and I, because that's the order that we're going in, Zach followed by Meghan, followed by me, we're hoping that Meghan and I can kind of pull this comedy history podcast out of the muck, out of the swamp of sadness that Artax is going to die in as Zach tells his story. And if you guys don't know that reference, God bless you.
I think the idea is that, we pummel them with the sadness but important information in my story at the beginning, and then by the end they get some goofs, so they retain the important information, but they forget how sad it made them.
Yeah, so hit him with the Mufasa dying, and then,
let's move on. Yeah.
You get him with the,
whatever we're going to talk about.
Yeah, whatever equivalent is for us.
All right. Howdy, folks.
All right, Zach, tell us your depressing story.
It's me, Zachary, and I'm going to be real honest with you. I'm tired. More than that, I'm tired of being tired, and it's tired of this world making me tired. When life hands you lemons, you make lemonade and all that, but I don't know about you, but I feel like I'm currently drowning in lemonade. Thanks, world. So...
Wow, fuck. I thought I was going to be able to make like some jokes, but that intro alone is enough to let me know that I might as well just toss it in. We're just gonna...
What I'm saying is buckle up, because you can expect the certain kind of feral energy that I have been known to bring when the world makes me so upset that I feel I have no choice but to vent my godly anguish somewhere. And thankfully, that usually tends to be somewhere a pool of knowledge, then no one is smote by my almighty wrath. So... the downside with this is that I pick not-so-funny topics that are of big importance. So tonight, let's talk about how the police have always sucked, how they continue to suck my time-eternal dick, and how the government has mishandled its military, and how citizens react to this mismanagement a lot longer than in the past few months. So...
I feel like you just described our whole podcast, though, is the problem.
Yeah, but...
like, we've been doing that since day one.
We have been, but this is, I feel like, when I get in these moods...
But now this is, like, all cannons on?
All cannons on all the time, baby. This is where we're at.
Full steam ahead.
All
guns blazing.
In 1963, John F. Kennedy manages to pull his dick out of whatever woman isn't his wife at the time, and... passes some truly shit policy by sending 16,000 military advisors overseas to Vietnam. And by 1965, that number turns into over 100,000 troops. And by 1968, that is over 500,000 troops. And Kennedy... by 1968, Kennedy might have a crater for a head, but America could still stick its dick into anything, and by God, it was going to do it. And so, in late April of 1970, the United States and South Vietnamese forces invade eastern Cambodia, claiming that it was the best and would oust the Viet Cong troops based there. And this leads campuses across the whole United States to collectively say, fuck you, we're done with your shit, starting a nationwide student strikes in early May of 1970. To which, holy fuck, there comes another American dick joke. Nixon shoves his executive order that only allows students to postpone draft service until the end of the semester rather than until graduation down the American people's throat. That is still the law today.
Oh, okay. Well, I'm glad that nothing's changed.
Yeah. Nothing has changed. And I'm so sorry that this intro has been so dick euphemism heavy, but the government's a dick.
Yeah, no, always has been. Insert the that's a penis gif from How I Met Your Mother.
Yeah, that's a penis. Get your hands off my penis. This leads to all this background information about Kennedy, Vietnam, and Nixon leads to the event that is the main meat of today's story. An event where college students banded together to tell people in power that what they were doing was wrong. And the people in power responded with militaristic action. On April 30th, 1970, President Nixon announces the launching of the Cambodian incursion. I almost said insurrection. This is, so you see where my brain's at. The launching of the Cambodian incursion. The next day, May 1st, 500 students gather on the commons of Kent State University in Kent, Ohio. This is the same place that was typically used on campus for rallies and protests. The Vietnam War had been going on for a while now, so there had been multiple protests. So this was not an uncommon occurrence. And by 1 p.m. of that day, students had dispersed in order to attend classes, and they had planned to come back and do another rally on May 4th. They started, I think, at 10 and they left by 1. It was peaceful. They just talked a lot, held a lot of signs. Parts of the May 1st demonstration included people calling to bring the war home, a group of history students burying a copy of the Constitution to show how Nixon had killed it. Not in a good way, but literally they were burying it and giving it a funeral. And the posting of a sign that said, "Why is the ROTC building still standing?" That's my personal favorite.
I hate this building in particular.
I hate this building in particular, yeah. Fuck this building. The problems arose with the rallies, and not even on the college campus, but rather at a bar that evening, when some people leaving the bar at around midnight end up throwing a beer bottle at some cop cars and smashing some storefronts, which sets off alarms. And eventually, this grows as more people join in this unrest. A bunch of people drunk at a bar leaving and seeing someone smashing something leads into a bunch of people drunk smashing stuff because one guy started. And by the time that the police arrive, there are 120 people gathered in the streets of Kent, lighting bonfires in the street and throwing beer bottles at police cars. And the crowd is made up of not just students. There are bikers, townfolk, and students. There's just an amalgamation of people who have joined in the chaos. And the police are called in full force, and a state of emergency is announced by the mayor. And eventually that gets cleaned up, and May 2nd rolls around, and because it's students protesting a war involved, rumors are flying around that it's made up of these radical revolutionaries who are here to destroy the city of Kent. And further rumors circulate that businesses are being threatened and students are hiding caches of weapons and planning to spike the town's water supply with LSD. Yes, all of these were real thoughts and rumors that were flying around. Which means that the mayor of Kent and the governor of Ohio get permission to call in the National Guard because there is a plausible threat to the townsfolk. And the National Guard of Ohio doesn't actually arrive in Kent until 10 p.m. on May 2nd. And at that point, the largest protest at Kent State is underway. And the ROTC building is, in fact, on fire.
Oh, okay. Well, they didn't like it anyway.
They wondered why it was still standing. It's not going to be standing much longer. No one was harmed.
Fire does.
That is what fire does. No one was harmed in the burning of the ROTC building.
Nobody was harmed in the making of this fire.
No one was harmed in the making of this fire. Exactly. It is actually... The FBI later gets called in, which you'll see why later, but the FBI gets called into Kent State University, and the FBI investigates the burning of the ROTC building, and no suspect is ever apprehended in the actual arson, but they find that it was not done by Kent students. Kent students didn't set fire to the building, and then, they never find out who exactly does it, but most of the participants, rather, in the arson were not Kent students. It was just other people who were at the rally.
We did not have sexual relations with that fire.
Yes, thank you for the John F. Kennedy reference throwback. No, that's Bill Clinton. Jeez.
Yeah, that is Bill Clinton.
That's Bill Clinton,
The other guy who couldn't stop sticking his dick in things, you know?
It's hard not to.
It's hard when you're an American president to stay faithful to your wife, apparently.
It's so hard to just follow your marriage vows.
Yeah, but that's like most marriages nowadays, so.
Yeah.
That's true.
So, on May 3rd, after the burning of the ROTC building on Kent State campus, many things have quieted down, except for the Ohio governor, who is screaming that the students are un-American and they're only here to terrorize the community. He's saying that he's going to go and try to get executive orders to disband the ability to gather, and he's going to basically put the whole place under martial law. And then someone calls him out on it weeks later, and he's like, I never said that. typical fucking governor shit. And
I never said that.
I never said I was going to do unconstitutional things. I just
But here's the thing. It was back in a time when that wasn't on Twitter.
Yes.
Nowadays, politicians are like, I'm going to kill every one of these kids. But they post it on Twitter. And then they're like, I never said that. And someone shows them the tweet, and they're like, that wasn't me.
Yeah.
I got hacked.
I got hacked.
I'm with you, but I'm also, when researching this story, it is scary to see the parallels.
Yeah.
And, yeah, the Ohio governor's having a fucking shit fit because he's the Ohio governor and he wants everything under his control.
Because he lives in Ohio.
Because he lives in fucking Ohio. And on May 3rd, after the building is burned, things have quieted down. During the day, there's actually many students from Kent State who come downtown and help clean up anything that was bashed in during the riots. A lot of them were like, hey, we feel bad that, like, these mom and pop stores got vandalized. That's never was the intention of anything that we're trying to do. So let us help you clean up. It's the least we can do. Which is met with mixed reactions by many of the town's citizens because, you know, this is fucking 1970s and they're hippies and therefore they're hated. But the students tried, at least. And around...
They tried.
Yeah, they tried their best.
It's important to try.
Yeah. At 8 p.m., on May 3rd, students gather once again to hold a rally on campus. And by 8:45, the National Guard is deployed and hurling tear gas to disperse the crowd.
Fuck those kids.
Fuck them kids.
Man,
However, get them
fuck
out of
those
here.
kids, bro.
Fuck those kids.
Fuck those kids. However,
How
after...
is this different from the Northeastern protests?
Different from the what?
The Northeastern protests that just happened?
That's why I said the parallels are crazy. There is a big difference, and we're going to get to it. Hold your horses.
Yeah, I'm holding them.
So
They're being held.
the tear gas disperses the crowd, but the students reassemble elsewhere, and they hold a sit-in. And the point of the sit-in is to get a meeting with the mayor of Kent and the university president to kind of be like, hey, we want to continue our protests peacefully, but there's armed guards here. What the fuck are we supposed to do?
Yeah, what are we supposed to do here?
They're never met with any good intentions. And so at 11 p.m., the National Guard announces a curfew going into effect and begins to force students back into their dorms, and a few students are bayoneted in the process. You know, the normal stuff.
Necessary casualties.
Necessary
of
casualties
war.
of human life. No one was killed by bayonets, but they were definitely stabbed. You know.
Yeah, well, if you've got a bayonet, you fucking use it.
I guess so. On May 4th, 1970, a rally begins at noon that had been planned on May 1st, with almost 2,000 people gathering at Kent University. And this happens despite the university handing out over 12,000 leaflets in the days leading up to it saying that the event was canceled, because the university didn't want these people gathering. The Ohio National Guard, not 5 minutes after the whole thing starts, after the people get there at noon, they obtain a bullhorn and begin yelling for the crowd to disperse, which doesn't work because it's a teeny tiny bullhorn and there's 2,000 fucking people on a quad. Also, fuck cops. When the announcement is given a sound system that is large enough to be heard, the protesters respond by flipping them off and singing protest songs. Once again, fuck cops. So, the National Guard does the only thing that it knows how to do when their little feelings get hurt, and that's grab an M79 grenade launcher and start loading up tear gas. And
okay, but like Sam, I do that too when I'm throwing a fit.
Yeah. So, this is totally ineffective because the wind blows most of the gas away, not harming the crowd at all, allowing the protesters to start chanting pigs off campus and throwing the tear gas back at them. Which
They might be heroes.
I, too, say my heroes, and I think that that's great. However, the only thing it really ends up accomplishing is giving the National Guard the all okay to lock and load and begin advancing against the crowd. And the National Guard deploys in several units and starts pushing the crowd out of the square. They fire tear gas into the crowd, as they're pushing them back, so it's a lot more confined space, making it so the tear gas is effective. And the protesters get broken up into a lot of smaller groups that kind of has to disperse all out around campus, with the main goal of meeting back up and continuing this protest. But the main conflict of the Kent State stuff happens in the practice field area, as a large group of protesters is routed to the practice fields that are down at the bottom of a hill. And many students retreat to the practice fields because they know at the edge there is they have like a rock wall. So there's a lot of like hand-sized stones and rocks that are good for hucking. And they start grabbing rocks, and as the National Guard is coming down the hill, are throwing rocks at the National Guard, because the Guard has now pinned them inside this practice area. And eventually, after getting pelted with some rocks, the National Guard retreats back up the hill, leading down to the practice field, and the protesters go, well, okay, they're leaving. We kind of have no choice but to follow them because there's no way else out of the area, so we're gonna like keep our distance but follow behind them. And the Guard reaches the crest of Taylor Hall, and there's a group of protesters at the top of the hill, and the protesters part ways to let the National Guard through because there's nowhere else for them to go, and they're not here to start a fucking conflict. They're here to just say, leave us alone. And as the National Guard passes through the group of students that part for them at the top of the hill, and there's a group of students at the bottom of the hill, the National Guard turns around on the students following them and fires upon the protesters with no verbal warning.
Man, what a great government.
In the end, at least 29 out of the 77 National Guardsmen fired their weapons, expending 67 rounds of ammunition in 13 seconds.
Okay.
That is 3 shots, at least 2 shots per person per second. No, that's bad math. Sorry. That's, in total, 2 shots a second. Something like that. I'm bad at math. It's still baffling.
Me too. It's a lot.
It's a lot.
I mean, bad at math or not, we're calculating how many bullets got shot into innocent protesting students. So maybe we don't go for like the most accuracy on that. Math. Yeah. Maybe we don't dwell too long on.
Yeah. The students that were fired upon, the shortest distance from the National Guard was 71 feet, almost a third of an American football field away. Others were up to 400 feet away, so more than an American football field away. 4 students were killed, and 9 others were shot and injured. The National Guard had 1 member injured enough to receive medical treatment, and that was a bad bruise on a guardsman's arm that happened 15 minutes before the shooting even started.
Well, his feelings were also hurt.
And the saddest part to me of the event that will later be known as the Kent State Massacre is that there was next to no penalty for the shootings, with the only action being brought in the form of an out-of-court settlement by the state of Ohio about a decade later.
I mean, it's no different than how cops are treated today when they do things like that. Like, you know, we've had conversations in the past when, like, the whole Black Lives Matter protesting was happening, and, like, all these cops really do, all that ever really happens is that they get retired from the police force that they're working on, and they get shuffled to a new one. It's like priests that diddle kids get kicked out of their churches, but they're also not stopped from becoming priests elsewhere.
Yes. But I think that this story was important because it's wild how it's also lined up in the month of May that things have been recently happening. But this is the month of May that in 1970 that this happens. And the parallels between how people have reacted in age groups and belief systems is astounding, because at this time, you know, you had fucking Richard Nixon who was like, gun the hippies down, I don't give a fuck about them. I wish you shot more of them, Tricky Dick Nixon. And, you know, an American populace who was bent to that sort of idea of, hey, it serves them right for trying to, like, start a violent protest. Like, that kind of rhetoric was still around in 1970 as it is today, and that hasn't changed, and that's really fucking shitty.
Yeah, no.
Well, I think, like, the crazy thing, too, is on Sunday I was, like, listening to, I think it was Lori Trahan, who is one of the representatives for Massachusetts. And the interviewer was like, you know, what do you think about the protest? And she's like, oh, there's a rich tradition of, like, student protesting in the United States, and, like, we should let those students do it, but, like, respectfully. And it's like, dude, protesting isn't like a cookout.
No.
It's like they're not doing it to hang out. Like, unless you actively are, like, causing inconveniences for the powers that be, whether it be, like, the police, or, like, disrupting traffic, or, like, disrupting money-making efforts, protests are sort of ineffective.
Yeah.
And I understand there's, like, peaceful protesting, but, like, the way that they were talking about protesting was, like, oh, they should be seen and heard, but, like, not felt. And then, you know, after a few days, like, let's wrap it up and get on with business as usual.
And we can pretend it never happened.
And we can pretend it never happened. Like, we can all feel good that we all did something, but it's like, that's the rich tradition that you're talking about is sort of like, you know, the protesting about, like, unfair wages and, like, ceasefire and, like, it's a ball ache.
Here's the thing, though. They're going to pretend it never happened regardless.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know.
It's just a known fact that no matter what's happening, they're going to pretend that it didn't happen.
But, like, the other point that is so huge to me, that is exemplified in the Kent State Massacre and is exemplified in the current climate, is protests are peaceful most of the time. There's always, you know, sometimes someone does something stupid, but 99% of the time, protests are peaceful until the fucking cops show up. Like, what do you expect?
Oh, yeah.
You have, if someone came to my door of my home in full riot gear and a gun and said, I'm here for your safety, but do as I tell you, I don't feel safe. Like, how the fuck are you supposed to react? Like, and again, I think it also goes back to the Kent State stuff where it was like, students showed up the day after a bunch of drunk assholes started trashing the town and were like, hey, sorry, like, that's not the aim of this. Let's help you clean up. Like, and you see people now, like, there's people who have been, like, taking videos of the student encampments right now, and it's all like, oh, hey, this is a meditation tent, and, like, over here we're, like, having a public discourse, and over there we're like, is food. Like, it's not a fucking terrorist organization. It's people having discourse and understanding and saying, hey, this is shitty, how do we fix it? You know?
Yeah.
So...
See, and, like, the thing is, and this is probably really ignorant of me, and people can call me ignorant if they want to, but I'm staying out of, like, I'm not researching anything that's going on in the world. I'm not even listening to news about what's going on with all of this, just because I don't know enough to have an opinion, and I will not be able to research the issue extensively enough on both sides of it to know an answer. And I think a lot of people are always just like, oh, but, like, they want to talk to you about the way the government's fucking it up in what is, let's be honest, it's a very difficult situation. Obviously, like, targeting women and children is not the move. Like, it's, so you can fundamentally condemn that, but it is like there's so many intricate pieces leading up to that it's like I wasn't able to do enough research to be able to firmly take a side either way. And now that it's come to the point of, like, it's genocide or they're killing women and children, or I'm just like, I don't know enough to be upset aside from anything aside from the fact that we're killing women and children.
Yes. This is a conflict that has been going on for a long time. You didn't do enough research a decade ago. So you're really not going to be able to do enough research right now. I understand that mentality, but I think that you underlining that by being like, hey, the simple moral objection of not murdering innocent people. Yeah. I'm all for that.
Well, I think it's also, but it's also important to say, like, I don't know enough about the base conflict. And now
to comment on the base conflict, yes.
If I pick a side, because that's what every war is you're picking a side. Yeah. And then it's just like, but if I pick a side now, it's like, but do you really know what you're talking about? No. So it's always easier for me to just shut up and, like, absorb facts as they come in and then be like, oh, well, that's not great news. But then the other side will do something that's equally bad. And then the argument becomes, well, they had to because they did this. And it's just like, okay, but that's every war. Like, that's the back and forth of it. So I prefer not to get too in the weeds about something that I don't fucking know about.
And I respect that, and I will not get into the weeds about it with you now. That is not why I brought this up. I brought this up to basically say, hey, this is not the first time we've seen something like this. It won't be the last.
History repeats itself.
History repeats itself. You know, that's the point I wanted to make. So,
yeah, it's just a shame that nothing's changed and that, like...
Yeah.
Again, it's, you know, us saying just that well-intentioned people get the shit kicked out of them, and then whoever wins gets to say, like, oh, they were raucous upstarts. You know what I mean? Like, even in a time when there's... Like, everyone has a phone in their hand and can take video of everything that's happening. The media, like, if the media ends up on the wrong side of it, it's always just like, look at these violent protesters. And it's like, they weren't violent until someone came down and pointed a gun in their face and said, move or else. So, it's fucked.
Yeah. It is. It's truly fucked. And with
so
that,
Meghan, let's try and be funny.
Story. And that's depressing. Yeah, let's try to be. Let's try to be funny. The title of my story is "Phone It In."
Phone it in.
Yep. Phone it when. Anyway, you'll see why after I tell you the story, as most of my titles do.
Thanks, Fritz Weatherby.
Yeah,
I'll tell you
problem.
the story on tonight's New Hampshire Chronicle.
I'll tell you the story on tonight's New Hampshire Chronicle.
I fucking love Fritz Weatherby's voice.
Yeah, I know. He's like he's a fucking icon. So, cracking my knuckles. I'm about to be an icon too right now. So one of my favorite books is The Phantom Tollbooth. I'm sure I've said that.
Yes, you
at
and
some
me both.
point.
Yes.
Yeah, I love that book.
I love that book so much.
It's so good. Like, no notes.
No
He
notes.
did it.
He did it the first time.
Notes. He did it the first time. Like, I like the idea that he takes something that's abstract and he makes it literal. Like, you know, with rhyme and reason being princesses that bring peace to the realm, or like a watchdog with a watch face for a body. So I think that's why I was like drawn to the story, even though it's
Bananas?
like it's bananas.
Well, it is, yeah.
I don't
It's
know.
absurd.
There's just something about like the concept of taking turns of phrases and
Making them real.
putting them into the realm of reality. So the story tonight that I want to tell is not necessarily like a moment in history, but it is something that sort of does the same thing as the Phantom Tollbooth. So I am going to talk about the phone winds.
Okay.
And in Argentina, they're called the Witch's Wind. And in New Zealand, the Maori call them the Te Hau Kai Tangata, the wind that devours humankind.
The Maori,
And
by the way.
the Maori. Yeah, the Maori, sorry.
I
and
didn't know if that was another one of those
No, I
words
know.
that you've only read on paper.
It is one of those words. Like, I never say it ever, and I knew I was going to fuck up on it.
No, I mean,
so,
like, it's fine.
I appreciate the
I just didn't want you to run into a Maori person and be like, "Oh, you're a Maori." Have them be like,
my
"What the
bad.
fuck
Yeah,
did
and
you
they'll-
just say?"
And I would be like, I don't even know how I got here because this was a 25-hour plane ride. So I'm gonna go. I'm about to head on out.
I'm just gonna leave now.
I'm just gonna leave now. But in Polish folklore, they're called the winds that carry insanity and madness. So with all of those cool things in mind, we are going to zero in on a small town in Switzerland that is nestled in the shadow of the Alps.
Okay.
I'd like you to picture that the day is beautiful, like blue sky, sun shining, but the air has turned humid and it's like close, and there's a fluffy bank of clouds that begins to cascade over the mountain peaks. Like, it's picture perfect, but to the people in the town below, all of this spells trouble because these are the signs that the phone winds are coming. Scientifically, they are just warm, dry, downslope winds. Like, they are rain shadow winds that have dropped most of their moisture on the windward sides of the mountains, and they can raise temperatures by as much as 25 degrees Fahrenheit in a matter of hours, which is, like, kind of crazy.
Yeah.
And, yeah, it's like... And also, it sucks all the moisture out of the air, too. So, like... And people don't like super dry weather. It's not great for us.
Although every time that you're talking about how humid it is, everyone's like, "That's why you got to move south. It's a dry heat."
It's a dry heat, and no one knows what kind of heat we like. All right, that's what I'm convinced of.
Sorry, I just keep dropping things that I'm trying to very quietly fidget with things in my little realm of the world, but I keep dropping.
That's fair.
I'm just over here
it.
like playing with dice, and I'm like, "Oh, this is really pretty," and then it just drops into the rest of the dice that I have. Anyways, I apologize.
It just drops onto your microphone.
Yeah.
You're like, "Oh, my apologies," and then there's like the crash of the 9/11 towers as your dice all fall.
Oh, Jesus Christ! I was
Anyway,
not ready for us to go there.
now that I've got your attention again,
and Meghan made it funny again.
That's the fucking most unhinged way to get someone's attention.
Now that I've brought it back to 9/11, I'd like to bring you back to Switzerland.
Yeah, please do.
So, to the people who live in the path of the phone, they are linked to a whole host of symptoms such as migraines, depression, confusion, and increased risk of accidents and crime.
That's me on a Tuesday. Oh, shit.
Yeah, dude,
Today's Tuesday.
Oh, shit, the winds
It's Tuesday? I gotta rob a fucking bank.
Today's Tuesday. I gotta rob a bank. I gotta commit more crimes. So these winds have more side effects than over-the-counter medications, and I also like the idea that they cause crime, and that some guy is like, I couldn't help but rob the store. The winds, they pushed me to do it.
Well, that's any fucking psychosis, right? Where it's just like,
oh yeah,
the voices in my head told me to murder.
This seems like a very particular psychosis, Matt.
Yeah.
But, like, people believe it, though, right? Like, I would like to believe that, like, there is a judge who gets migraines in Switzerland from the phone winds, and they're just like, case dismissed. It did cause him to commit crimes.
The wind blew, and he needed to steal a car, guys. I don't know what to tell you. It makes
couldn't be helped.
Sense.
He's like, I played Grand Theft Auto once, and I felt it in my bones when the winds blew. So, while many people are immune to the effects of the phone, some are what are called phone sensitive. And there are even special weather reports that warn people when they are coming. And some people have reported that they knew it was going to be a phone day by 7 a.m. because they already heard increased police and ambulance sirens. So, lock your doors. Don't go aside. In the 19th century, there was a clinical review on the effects of the winds, and it found that suicides and accidents increased by 10% during the times when the winds blew in Central Europe. And I think that's significant. They didn't know anything about science in the 19th century, but I'm willing to give them this one.
Yeah.
So, there are a lot of scientists that explain away what is called phone sickness as people being hypochondriacs. I also would like it to be known that I don't respect doctors that tell me that I'm making up what I'm experiencing, because they're not riding this meat puppet. They're not here with me, so fuck them. They're like, either get in the ride or, like, believe me. What is probably happening is a lot of things. So, for example, shifts in barometric pressure and the electrical field in the atmosphere can cause people to experience pain, and mental changes while being in a dry, dusty, and windy environment can be discomforting. But the fact remains that the sickness that comes with the winds has been around long enough to make it into folklore across the world, and usually those stories hold a grain of truth even if we can't pin down exactly what the truth is.
Yeah.
Like, everyone can't be making it up.
Yeah. There's enough corroborating witnesses.
There's like enough people like throughout the world that's like, hey, when these particular winds come, people get weird.
Little cuckoo bananas.
Yeah. And I just think that maybe they truly are the winds that devour humanity. Just let me have this.
One can only hope.
I'm listening. I'm hearing you out.
Just let me have this. Let something be cool for once. Just like for once. I'm not asking a lot. I'm asking so little.
See,
and let these winds be witch winds.
Bewitching winds. I love it. My only question is, do I name this episode "Phone It In" or "It's Fucking Wimdy"?
I think it's fucking windy
out here.
Is really the good one.
Yeah. Or, sorry, I dropped my dice like the 9/11 towers.
Wow, no, we definitely cannot
can't
name...
do that one.
cannot name the episode that.
I mean,
Why,
I can.
we're cowards?
Because because we're cowards, but also because I'd prefer not to be canceled. I like having a podcast.
Yeah.
I guess.
I like having a fan base.
You know what? I'm giving us quality content.
Yeah. Yeah, that's exactly what it is.
Quality.
I'm going to move on now, if that's cool.
Rude.
Boom. It's me, Zachary, interrupting the episode, and I apologize for doing so, but we have some important messaging from our friends over at Magic Mind, and now normally we get to have a wonderful conversation about the wonderfulness that is Magic Mind, but they gave us some new information, and I wanted to make sure that you were completely up to date with everything from them. Now, if you've been a listener to the podcast, you know the wondrous thing that is Magic Mind because we've had the opportunity to talk about it a number of times. But we do want to come back and talk to you about it a little bit more. 5 years ago, Magic Mind came around and they were doing their best to make sure that you have a 100% mental performance by creating a mental performance shot. It's a little green vial of goodness that you can take in the morning or in the afternoons when you really need it. I personally take my Magic Mind when I get out of work around 2 o'clock because when you wake up at 5 o'clock in the morning every day and 2 o'clock rolls around, it's a little bit too late for a cup of coffee, but you still need a little help anyway. It's 100% safe, third-party tested ingredients. It's not one of those crazy energy drinks that you get from the convenience store. It's created with a scientific advisory board of doctors and medical researchers. It has over 200 scientific studies for the ingredients in there, and all the mushrooms inside Magic Mind are organically grown in California. So, if you want to give yourself a little bit of extra energy throughout the day, a little boost, a little pep, head on over to magicmind.com/whistory and use our offer code WHistory20 at checkout. It gets you up to 48% off your first subscription or 20% off a one-time purchase. So if you do decide that you really like Magic Mind or you've tried it in the past and you really want to continue with a subscription, but you were a little iffy on, spending the money for it, 48% with our code WHistory20 is going to be fantastic. So again, a little bit of extra help throughout the day, a little bit of that mental acuity boost. It's fantastic. So head on over to magicmind.com/whistory and use our offer code WHistory20 at checkout.
Is that?
It's not, but go ahead.
All right. Do you want to keep talking about 9/11?
No, I mean, yeah, but no, I'll save it for another day.
All right, folks. We're going to be talking about another wonderful woman from history. And this time, I'm talking about a woman by the name of Nellie Bly. Do you guys recognize that name at all? Or?
No.
I thought you said Blige for a minute, and I was like
Mary J?
That name sounds...
Mary J?
Mary J sounds familiar.
Mary J. Blige. So Nellie
You're not talking about her, though.
was born Elizabeth Jane Cochran.
Congratulations!
Ooh, we love it. We love a chick with a name change.
We do love a name change in later life.
Who was born.
She was born on May 5th in the year of our Lord 1864 in the great state of Pennsylvania.
Gross.
She was the 13th child of 15 that belonged to her father. Her father had 10 children by his first wife and another 5 by his second. And she was the third child in that second litter of kids. So
those poor uteri.
Second litter.
Yeah, no kidding.
That guy needs to get off people.
What's that?
That guy needs to get off of people.
Yeah.
He needs to get off his way.
It's like those vans with the fucking stick figure families in the windows, and you're just like, get off her.
Get off her.
Look,
Jesus.
man, sometimes there's not a whole lot to do.
Yeah, sometimes you just be fucking. Her childhood
I know what that's like.
I thought the dead air was enough time for someone to have made a bit, so I was like, I'm just gonna start. And then Megan's like, yeah, actually,
I'm not done. Anyway, now I'm done. Please go on.
But I also now feel like I'm being set up for that bit where I go to talk and then you're just like, actually,
hold on.
No, I would never do that.
So her childhood is pretty standard and unnoteworthy, aside from the fact that in the year 1880 she moves to what is now Pittsburgh. It was not called that. I'm not writing what it was because, frankly, I didn't want to type all the words. But in 1885, her local paper runs an article that spouts the usual bullshit about how women are primarily for having kids and maintaining the house.
Ain't that the truth?
And Elizabeth gets so pissed off that she decides to respond or send a note in and titles herself or claims the note is written by Lonely Orphan Girl. That's just how she signs off on the paper when the letter when she's done writing it. And the editor of the paper was so impressed by the writing that he put out an ad in the paper asking the writer to identify themselves. And of course, Elizabeth comes forward and decides to identify herself. And he decides to give her a job at the paper. And she's...
Oh, congratulations.
Yeah, we love a fucking girl boss.
We love an employed queen.
Yeah, an employed queen. Girl boss.
I love when a misogynist turns his way around because he's proven he's wrong.
Well, he wasn't the one that wrote the paper. Or wrote the article, specifically, but he was
but
the
he
one
sure
who...
did publish it.
He did publish it, for sure. So he offers her a job at the Pittsburgh Dispatch, and she changed her pen name from Lonely Orphan Girl to Nellie Bly after a song that was popular at the time. She started pretty quickly writing stories about how women wanted more from life than just being stay-at-home mothers, how some women might not want to get married, how divorce, she wrote stories about the effects of divorce on mothers. And, she continues in this vein for a little while, but then decides that she wants to do something a little bit more impactful. And she start working undercover at a factory in Pittsburgh to expose the unsafe working conditions in the factories and of factory workers. But when she brought this expose to her bosses, they were like, we don't want to upset any of the higher-ups in town.
Mm-hmm. They're like, oh no.
So instead of running this story, what we're going to do is we're going to reassign you to the society section of the paper.
You're getting a demotion because we can't upset the steel barons.
And she basically said that she didn't want to do that. And she asks to go to Mexico to be an international correspondent, and so they let her. So for 6 months, she gets reassigned, and she's in Mexico acting as their international correspondent for the Pittsburgh Dispatch. And when she comes back from Mexico, she is immediately reassigned to the society desk, and she quits.
Of course.
She's like, okay.
Yep. Good for her.
She's like, honestly, should have stayed in Mexico.
Should have stayed in Mexico. So what she ends up doing afterwards is she moves to New York City and gets a job working for a paper called the New York World. And this brings us to the reason that I'm talking about her at all. Not that, she's not an interesting character. I'll detail it. But the thing that really kind of caught my eye is... Nellie decides to fake being insane.
Oh, nice.
Okay.
And the reason that she decides to fake being insane is so that she can get herself committed to a mental asylum called Blackwell's Island.
Oh, shit.
Which was a home for the poor and... mentally insane.
Yup.
And so
things are clicking for me now.
She gets sent to Blackwell's asylum, where she stays for 10 days. And while she's there, she is subjected to physical and mental abuse by the staff at Blackwell's Island, and is, treated like shit, essentially. And after 10 days, she's pulled out and then goes on to write a scathing article about the way that the mentally ill are treated in our country. And I just want to say, since Zach did the sad thing, they're not treated much better today.
Yeah.
But it is sort of like her bread and butter, so to speak, is that she goes into these places and she exposes the terrible treatment of people. So she comes out, she writes this expose on how people in asylums are treated. This leads to wide-scale reforms in the treatment of these people. She also goes on to write a book called 10 Days in the Madhouse, which also details her, it has all her notes and all these things. And that, to me, was the standout thing that kind of got me into researching Nellie. Mm-hmm. Because she was it's just the balls that you kind of have to fake being insane just so that you can write an expose on how people are mistreated in an asylum.
Good for her.
Yeah, absolutely good for her.
So her brand of investigative journalism, this sort of undercover work that she does, leads her to prisons. She also ends up in sweatshops, and also ends up in branches of legislature where she kind of exposes the lobbying and things that go on in that vein. And so her sort of her whole thing is just shining a light on the seedy underbellies of a lot of these places, and kind of just bringing to light how shitty most of these things are. And honestly gets a lot of reformation starting because of her being such a well-respected journalist, and, her bringing to light all these things. The other thing that really interested me about Nellie as a person is that at a certain point in her life, she was inspired by Jules Verne's story Around the World in 80 Days, and she decides that she'd like to circumnavigate the globe.
Oh, hell yeah.
But she wants to beat the record.
Yes.
So she wanted to follow the exact path in the book, but she also wanted to see if she could do it faster, and in fact she did. She circumnavigated the world in 72 days, 6 hours, 11 minutes, and 14 seconds.
I love that for her.
Right on the buzzer.
But everywhere that she went, there was fanfare and there was excitement. The stunt itself made her super famous. If she wasn't already very well known because of her journalism. Mm-hmm. So she's she's really the first investigative journalist that existed, as far as doing deep dives and trying to find corruption in the way that she was. But then she's also very well known because she went around the world in 72 days and 6 hours and 11 minutes and 14 seconds. In 1895,
and also because of that,
she gets married to a millionaire.
Settling down with a hot mill.
Yeah, she does settle down a little bit. Eventually, her millionaire husband dies. And because of the will Oh, not the dream, actually, because he doesn't leave her a lot of money.
Fuck.
So she does eventually have to return to the world of journalism, and then she eventually dies in
the dream.
1922.
Damn.
But I thought her story was pretty interesting, just to be like...
Yeah, what a life.
I've heard the story of, there was a story that I was reading a long time ago that was... a person had gotten themselves committed to like a psych ward when there was nothing wrong with them. And like the only people who noticed were the people who did have something wrong with them, where they were like, why are you in here?
This?
And that sort
who's
of
this person?
led me down the rabbit hole of Nellie Bly's story, where she was like, I just want to expose the conditions of, the people who are living in these places. But to then read that she went on to do the same with, like, the prison system and sweatshops. And again, obviously, it hasn't gone away completely or been made completely right. But, like, she did start the ball moving in... a pretty good direction.
A difference.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that was kind of cool. So yeah, that was.
I think that's great.
That's my whole story.
And you're sticking to it.
And I'm sticking.
Well, we
to
tried,
it.
Zach.
Huh?
We tried.
We did try. Mine. I mean, I had said before the podcast that mine wasn't. There's not like a ton of space for goofs in mine, but.
It's still such an interesting story,
It's kind of an uplifting one, too.
Oh, absolutely.
The other option was the Stanford prison experiment, but I'm not going to talk about that.
Oh, wait, no.
This episode. That would have been really sad.
Yeah.
Not this time.
There's no point in making jokes about that one.
No.
The experiment was a joke in and of itself. Have you...
Okay.
Never mind. I'll bring it up for the time that I actually do, like... I was just gonna say that the guy who ran the Stanford prison experiment looks like a fucking Scooby-Doo villain, and I was gonna leave it at that.
I mean...
He does.
He really does. Anyways, but that's the end of the podcast, so Zach, you can do the thing about the socials and stuff.
Oh, thanks. I appreciate that. Well, folks, thank you very much
and that's
for
what
listening.
I appreciates about you.
Yeah, is that what you appreciates about me?
Oh, look, the ground.
Anyway, thank you very much, folks, for listening to our silly, with a little asterisk against it, little show. We do hope you learned a little something. We do hope you laughed a little bit. If you would like to support us, the best way to do that is by telling a friend. We don't advertise, or we don't pay you to advertise for the show. So the best way to share the show is to tell someone that you know that you think might enjoy it. You can also leave us a rating review on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. It helps bump us up the charts and helps people find us from the algorithm. So it's a free way to help us. If you have a little extra cash laying around and you want to help us, feel free to join our Patreon, which is www.patreon.com/Triumvirate Productions. And with that, you can get extra bonuses such as After Dark or the unedited episodes. But again, don't break the bank if you can't do it. We do offer $3, $5, and $10 levels, but we also understand if $3 a month is a lot. It's crazy times. But you can also follow us on our socials. You can find us on Facebook if you look up the Triumvirate Productions, and you can find us on Instagram if you look up at _Triumvirate_Productions. And with that, that's all I got.
Okay, well then I will take that as my cue to end the episode the way that I do every episode by saying, what the fuck, history?